Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm Colby Dezelick, and I'm here with
Antoine L. Smith.
Yes, who is a fellow cast member of Miss Saigon. And I'm trying to start this interview series where I talk to other actors, artists, people in the performing arts, and talk to them about their journey into theater, musical theater, how they got started, and some of their advice they would love to pass on to a new generation of musical theater students.
Ooh, when you say
and
generation,
performers.
it makes
Generation.
you sound old.
No. Just the next crop of people.
The next crop.
The next
I like
crop.
that.
Is that better?
That's better.
Good. So let's jump right into it. Just give us like a quick snapshot, like resume of some of the highlights of your career so far.
A quick snapshot. Okay. My first professional job where I was like actually getting paid and was able to pay my bills was Dragon Tales Live with V Corporation, which also produces Sesame Street Live. So I did Dragon Tales Live for a year, then I did Sesame Street Live for 2 years as Big Bird.
Wow.
After that, I moved to New York City in December of 2007, finished my last Sesame Street show that Sunday, got on a bus from Alabama that Monday, and landed in New York City. 8 months after that, I landed the national tour of Cats. Did that for a year, came back, did some regional stuff. Then in 2011, I booked Memphis on Broadway. Did that.
That was your first Broadway show.
That was my first Broadway show in 2011. I did that for the last year and a half. After that, I went on the first national tour of Cinderella as Lord Pinkleton. Came back from that and went right into The Color Purple revival, Tony-winning and Grammy-winning revival of The Color Purple. And 3 days after that closed, I ended up in Miss Saigon.
That's amazing. We're all caught up.
I mean, there's stuff in between.
Yeah. But that's
stuff.
the snapshot. That's the snapshot.
Right.
Yeah, you can eat the mic a little more. Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, that's a great career. And how do you want to say how old you are?
I am 36 years old. I'm very proud.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's fantastic.
Thank you.
So,
didn't make my Broadway debut till I was 30. So, I mean, it happens when it happens. Everyone's journey is different.
Yeah, absolutely. You just got to wait for that right show. And
unlike this gentleman who is
I'm
20-something.
A little lucky. But, yeah, the stars aligned. But, yeah, so let's rewind a little bit and talk about kind of like where you grew up and how you got into the performing arts and what was like that moment when you felt like this is something I could probably do.
I was born in Gary, Indiana.
Indiana.
Right, Music Man. I stayed there until about the 8th grade, and then my parents moved to Sioux City, Iowa, where I spent the rest of my life until I went to college at the University of South Dakota in Vermillion, South Dakota, where I studied actually opera and not musical theater. So
interesting.
I ended up doing musical theater. But my grandmother was a playwright, so when I was younger, she would write plays, and I would be in those, and she would write poetry, and I'd recite those things. And all my life, I've just been performing and singing. Like, I cannot remember a moment where I was not performing or singing.
Yeah. When was like the first time you like sang in public and you like remember that as like a big experience?
Actually, singing in public that I remember is 8 years old in church.
In church, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what did you sing?
Oh God, I don't even remember. I just know that it was 8 years old because I was able to join the choir.
Wow. Wow. So singing and performing your grandma's work. And so how did that translate into, where did you say you went to school?
University of South Dakota, Vermillion, South Dakota, go Coyotes.
And you studied opera there.
Right.
And so that certainly came from a voice background. What were you hoping to achieve with all of that? Was musical theater always on the horizon?
I wanted to be an opera singer for sure, and then musical theater was really, really introduced to me when I was a freshman in high school. Russ Clifford, my choir teacher, introduced me to the world of musical theater. I mean, I guess I knew what musical theater was, but I didn't know that there was actually the term for musical
Sure,
theater,
yeah.
because I grew up in, Gary, Indiana, and we just didn't talk about musical theater. It was just like singing, the Jacksons, like
Yeah,
performing.
absolutely.
It wasn't like musical theater as I know it now.
Did you ever do any of the shows in high school?
Oh yeah, the very first show that I did actually was Hello Dolly. I was one of the galloping waiters.
Yeah.
I think my sophomore year we did Grease. I was in the ensemble. My junior year we did Guys and Dolls, and I was Nicely.
Oh, perfect.
And we didn't do a show my senior year.
Yeah. So, how was playing nicely? Was that like an exciting step for you to kind of have a like a little part?
Well, it wasn't a little part. It
is a great part.
To finally be a junior and getting to be one of the leads finally, it was great.
Yeah. So that clearly translated over into what you wanted to study in college.
Absolutely. Well,
a little bit.
Yeah, because opera musical theater are kind of the same, but yet they're very different.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what was your training like, and what was the process like did you audition for schools, and how did you come across where you went and make that decision?
We didn't have to audition. We went,
you just kind of went
and did it.
How did you hear about it? Was it through like a voice teacher? Or?
Actually, my best friend Amanda Adams went there, and I said, "Oh, okay. Well, I'll just go there too." And it was close to home, so that made my parents happy. Well, made my mom happy. She didn't want me to go anywhere, so it worked out great.
That's great. So then, what kind of training did you get at school? What were some like main classes that were incredibly helpful in your career now?
We had opera workshop. We had oral theory, of course. We had, all of the music theory and piano. I can't play piano like fluently, but I can plunk out my part when I need to. Just your
regular old music college. Yeah, I get a lot of questions about people wondering whether they think getting a degree in some sort of performing arts is really important. What's your take on that?
There are actually a lot of people who do very well in the business that do not have degrees in, say, music or musical theater or acting. There are a lot of people on Broadway that, even in our own show, that have law degrees, have been in med school. It just depends on what your passion is, and if you do the work outside.
Absolutely. It's all about just what you bring into that room.
Absolutely. So I can't say it's bad to not have a degree or it's good to have a degree. Everyone's path is absolutely different.
Yeah. So you graduate college, and are you thinking about doing opera, or how do you sort of run into musical theater?
At this point, I'm wanting to do musical theater because opera is very, very hard. It's very, very specific. So in the United States, it's just a lot harder to break into the opera world,
that
especially as a principal. So you would have to go to Europe if you wanted to be a star, and I just, musical theater is a lot more freeing, and I got, I don't know. I just love it more.
Did you do any in college? Musical
we
theater?
did. I thought you were gonna say opera. We didn't do any actual musical theater in college, but I was doing musical theater outside
during that time,
college,
outside of.
Right.
Okay, good. So, but then, so then you graduate, and what was the first like professional gig you got, or even if it was during college?
Okay, I have to explain something. So, after that, I actually took 2 years off from doing any performing, and I went to culinary school. So I got my culinary degree in Ankeny, Iowa, at DMAC College.
Really interesting. What led you to do that?
My parents never, I always tell this story, my parents never deterred me from performing or wanting to have a career in performing, but they just said, just think of a backup plan just in case. And I loved food, and anyone that knows me to this day knows that food, I love food. I watch the Food Network 24 hours a day. If it's not Food Network, it's the Cooking Channel or the Travel Channel, Bizarre Foods, Carnival Eats, anything that has to do with food, I love.
That's amazing. So you just kind of like grabbed onto that other side passion and got that degree. Have you ever used that degree?
Oh,
like
yeah,
for
my
yourself?
first actual job before I booked Cats, I was working as a sous chef at this place called the Chocolate Bar in Henry Bendel's on Fifth Avenue.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? That's amazing.
That was my first official job, and then I started working at Williams Sonoma, which sold high-end kitchen appliances.
Oh, cool. So you did opera for 4 years?
Right.
4 years, and then you went to 2 years of culinary school. So then you came to the city?
And then in 2007, I ended the show that Sunday night, and then that Monday got on the bus to New York City.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
And so then your first professional acting job was?
Well, if you count Sesame Street, but my first professional acting would have to be Cats.
Cats.
Yeah.
The tour.
2008.
What was that process like going on tour, especially with like that show that's so iconic and?
Actually, I was actually a swing on the show, so I totally know what the swing life is all about. I actually enjoyed touring at that time because I was younger. I was younger, and Cats has always been a show that I've loved, and to be a part of that and being on tour with the great cast of people, seeing the country, it was a dream job.
How long were you on tour with it?
1 year. I did
full year.
Yeah.
And then you came back to the city.
And I came back to the city, and I did some regional theater up until 2011 when I got
Memphis. Yeah. Amazing. So Memphis was your first Broadway show.
Right. I have a funny story about that, too.
Yeah, let's hear it.
They were initially seeing me for the tour. And I was like, okay. So I was going in for callback after callback after callback after callback. And then 2 months, I didn't hear anything at all. I was like, oh, great. The tour is cast. All these people are about to go out on tour. They called me in one day, and they were like, okay, well, we're going to have you dance and sing and do the sides. And I'm like, okay. So I get there, and I'm looking around, and I'm like, okay, where are the rest of the people that I know that they're probably going to be seeing? It was me and two other guys. I just did three. It was me and two other guys. We go in, we dance, we sing. I get home later that day. Antoine, you're going to be on Broadway. And a week later, I started rehearsal.
Later that day, and a week later. Day. That's incredible. Yeah. That's like a great caveat to take away from.
So you never know. Like they could be seeing you for something else, and you end up doing something else. You want Broadway? No, I'd rather have the tour. What? Of course.
Wow. Yeah. Every audition is for the next audition.
Absolutely.
You never quite know where they're trying to place you.
That's why I always tell people. They say, "Oh, it's only the associate in the room. It's only this person in the room." You should never think like that because you never know. You never know.
Wow. So what was that experience like of making your Broadway debut and in such a great show too?
Well, everyone knows that Antoine L. Smith is not a dancer. And if you see Memphis, these people are dancing their hearts out. So I'm a little bit nervous going in, but for some reason I was able to pick it up. I don't know if my mind was like, Antoine, you have to do this. You are the one that they chose. You have to do this. And then some of the people that I was partnering with are like legends in the dance world. Bahia Gaines is a legend in the dance world, and she was my partner, and I was having to do lifts and like these back bend lifts with her. And, you know, I was very, very nervous, but the cast was great. And Yeah, I could not have dreamed of a better Broadway debut.
That's amazing.
But I do have more to add to that story. I wish I could write. I could write a book, but I don't even know how to start writing a book. But I was in the show for, I think, maybe 7 shows, and I was understudying. One of my tracks was understudying the principal lead, Del Rey. I was in my own track for 7 days, and then that weekend, something had happened, and they needed me to go on as the principal with no understudy rehearsal. I kid you not, no understudy rehearsal.
Wow.
And for 3 shows, I went on as Del Rey, and I was able to do it just from sitting in the audience watching the show, learning my own original track, but also unconsciously
Trying to soak that in.
Del Rey.
Wow.
And I went on with Tony Nominees, Montego Glover, Chad Kimball, Nancy Opal. I mean, it was crazy. It was crazy.
Wow, that's incredible. Going back to your dance experience, this guy is one of the hardest working people non-dancers I've ever seen. Every time I see him in Miss Saigon rehearsal, he's over there doing some sort of ribbon or doing the morning. I mean, always practicing. So, I mean, I definitely think that work ethic followed through, and I'm sure is one of the reasons they cast you and gave you that first shot. Yeah. Great. So you did Memphis, and we'll just kind of fast forward to the next great show.
What was after Memphis though? A little bit of more regional theater. Then I got the first Broadway national of Cinderella.
Yeah, so you went back out on the road.
I went back out on the road.
Were you excited to do that after you had just done a Broadway, or not just done a Broadway show, but had one under your belt?
Oh, I was very excited to do it and to go out as a principal, of course. So
right.
You know, it was a little bit different.
Yeah.
And going out with Paige Foray, who was also in our show, who played Cinderella beautifully. But yeah, it was a great experience. Got to revisit some of the places that I visited on Cats, but being older now, I could enjoy things a little bit more.
Yeah. And how long were you on that tour?
1 year also.
A year again.
Yeah.
Great.
A little over a year.
So then walk us up to the point of The Color Purple, which is a show that's very fresh on everyone's minds because it just closed, like right before Saigon started.
January 8th, to be exact.
Yeah. And how did you step into that?
Okay, so this is also another story.
You do need a book.
I do need a book so people can know. There is this book out called Making It on Broadway. I don't know if you've ever read it, but it tells the stories of all these famous Broadway people, of how they made it to Broadway and their struggles and not having to struggle sometimes, just getting the job. But I would recommend that reading for anybody. Making It on Broadway.
Great.
So actually a year before, I have found out that the revival was coming back, and I was like, they're doing a revival already? The show just closed like 8 years prior, 7 years prior, so that's pretty quick for a revival to come back. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be in that revival. I wanted to be Harpo, and I thought about it every day. I was like, I'm going to be in that revival. I'm going to be in that revival. I'm going to be in that revival. So the auditions come up, and I'm on the national tour of Cinderella, and they're not seeing anyone on tape. Well, not at that point. They weren't seeing me on tape, at least. So I was like, man, I'm going to miss my opportunity. And I was plotting and scheming. Okay, if I'm off of the show on this day, I can make it in on this day. If they have the auditions on this day, if they don't, then I'm screwed. But the week that they had some auditions or appointments, Cinderella was on a layoff. I don't know how that worked out, but we magically had a layoff put into the schedule. So I go home, I have an appointment, I audition, I have a call back that same week. Thank God we're on a break. I had my auditions, then call back. I think I had 2 callbacks that week that we were there. So then we had to go back out on tour. And by the grace of God, They wanted me to come back 2 weeks later, and I had my vacation planned like 6 months before for that week to go back.
Perfect. Wow.
So I went back. I had my callbacks. I think I had maybe 3 callbacks that week. And then I think the day before I went back out on tour, I found out that I got it.
You booked it. Wow.
So I got it. I found out that I got it in June, and then we started in October. So I kept the secret for
a little while.
A really long time, yeah.
That's amazing. What was once you guys did start rehearsals, what was that process like working with all those amazing people?
I have to say, hands down, it is to this date the most gratifying, the most spiritual, the most humbling theater experience I have ever had. John Doyle is a genius, and he was where his main concern was being a white man trying to tell a black story, but this man did it so brilliantly. I mean, there wasn't a day that people were not crying in rehearsal.
Wow.
So to go from the full-blown production of, I don't know, maybe 30 people in a cast to 17 people in a cast, and using nothing but chairs as your main props, and 3 baskets with everything you will need for the entire show, your fan, your water, your blanket. I mean, the man was genius, absolute genius, and the process was unbelievable.
That's incredible.
Unbelievable.
Wow. So you've definitely had a pretty great career so far. Of course. Do you have any plans for the future of what's next to come past Saigon?
I mean, we just started Saigon, so I'm actually enjoying this. And John is one of my dream roles. Oh, another story. Okay. So 1996, March or April of 1996, we were coming to New York for spring break. And the first Broadway show I ever saw was Miss Saigon in the Broadway theater.
Wow.
And I will never forget sitting in the back of the theater. We were in the back row of the orchestra. I remember that. And seeing that helicopter come down on stage was mind-blowing. I mean, for a little kid from the Midwest to see this thing happening on Broadway, and then 20 years later to be in the exact same theater doing the exact same show, man,
that's
full
amazing.
Circle.
Yeah, seriously. I feel like a lot of people in the show have had that kind of experience.
Oh, absolutely.
It was like one of the first shows they had ever seen, and it like turned them on to musical theater. And so it is very cool to be back in that exact same theater with all that history.
Understudying a dream role of mine, John.
Yeah, this guy and I get to play around a lot in rehearsal with understudying.
We do. And it's so good. This man is a genius. This man is a genius. I can't wait to see him.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, just sitting in Saigon now. So, to kind of wrap up, I mean, you've certainly had a fantastic career. What advice would you give to any aspiring musical theater students or theater students that are in high school or younger, even in college?
One of my good friends, Rima Webb, always uses this quote whenever she speaks to young aspiring actors. Know that you are enough, no matter if you're the nerdy person, if you're the overweight person, if you're the white person, the black person, the transgender person. Like, there will be space made for you. You don't have to transform into something that you're not, because it's harder to try to transform and fit into some other mold than it is to be your true authentic self, which in more cases is better than trying to portray someone else. And I also have been told that when you find a role that is your true essence, like, there is no way that anybody could ever take that from you. So be true to yourself. Learn as much as you can. Do as much as you can. If you're a great actor, learn to sing. Take voice lessons. If you're a great dancer, take voice lessons. If you're a great singer, take dance lessons. So I mean, you never stop learning. I mean, I'm 36 years old. I still take vocal lessons. I still take acting. Acting coachings, and it's never ending. You can never be too great for yourself, ever.
That's amazing. That's fantastic advice. Antoine, thank you so much for coming on our very first ever interview, whatever we're going to call this thing, Actors Corner or something like that.
Colby's Actors.
We'll come up with a name later. Don't worry about it.
Spotlight.
But thanks so much for watching. If you like these videos, let us know. Subscribe to my channel. You can check out my daily vlogs, which also will take you behind the scenes on a lot of Saigon stuff happening right now. And otherwise, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.